People often try to be perfect. Nobody's looking for perfection. The key is you do not have to be perfect, but you have to perfect your uniqueness. That's the key.
Welcome to the Going North podcast, where you will be informed, encouraged, and empowered to embrace your dreams and advance in life through authorship. I'm your host, best-selling author of the book Stay the Course, and certified leadership trainer, Don Brightman. Be sure to check out the goods and services from every guest, as well as the host himself, yours truly. Now let the fun begin. Are you tired of feeling like you're going nowhere in life? What would happen if you changed the trajectory of your life? Imagine what your life would look like if you started knocking down your goals, if you gained more confidence, or if you understood your gifts and how to use them. Millions of people feel like this, but you don't have to stay stuck in these feelings. This is where a versatile success signature program, Lost and Found, will help you, my friends. So if you want to get a nice discount on this awesome personal development program from a good dude from the East Coast of the USA, Justin Rambo, enter the code Lost and Found Going North. That's Lost and Found Going North. You enter in that code and enroll today. You'll receive $200 off the program just because you, my friend, are a listener of this show. Pick up this program, enter that code Lost and Found Going North, and you will advance, my friends. Now let's get on with the show. And today on the High Life Real Builder for Authors, I got to thank my good buddy Stan McCluskey, baby. Check out his past episode as well as his wonderful book titled Divorce is Worse Than Death, because he hooked me up with one heck of a super special, awesome human today, folks. A fellow bread warmer, folks, aka a fellow Toastmaster, a decorated champion. My man, just a couple of his awards: 2019 Outstanding Global Cybersecurity Leadership Award, 2017 and 2020 People's Choice Award in Cybersecurity, and the 2020 Champion of the Year. So my goodness, you're probably wondering who this superstar international conference speaker is. It's the one, the only Dr. Mansur Hasib. How you doing today, Doc?
I'm doing great, Dom. Thank you very much for having me. I love that introduction. That is amazing. And yes, thank you, Stan, for introducing us.
Yeah, because the pre-record is freaking awesome, folks. Like, man, freaking gold, baby. Gold, man. It's like platinum almost.
All right.
Yeah, man. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But as with all introductions, I probably forgot 99% of what you do. So mind filling in any cavities I missed, since you're a decorated author and doctor in the cybersecurity world?
Well, I know that all of that stuff is out there, but in the real me, the inside me, is basically I've lived my life as an outlier. Okay. Some people might think that that's a misfit, a nonconformist, or something like that, or even a rogue, right? So it's all a matter of perspective. But I see it as being an innovator. I also see it as being a leader, because I think stagnancy makes no sense. We, I mean, without continuous improvement in our personal and professional lives, I mean, everything would be boring. So, and I've never lived my life that way. So I'm continuously learning, and I've done that in organizations. I've transformed, say, medical schools. I've transformed nuclear power plants. I've transformed healthcare organizations, all through digital strategy. So that's basically what I've done. And now I'm trying to do that in education, because I feel like education is broken. We're teaching to dubious testing standards and often testing knowledge, but it really doesn't matter what people know. I want to know what they can do, because knowledge in the head is useless unless you can actually do something with that knowledge. That knowledge is completely useless. So testing memory through a test makes absolutely no sense. So I transitioned to academia for after spending literally 25, 30 years in variety of sectors. in professional life and went into academia to develop these doers, the fixers. And so the graduate programs that I developed actually have won some awards because of that innovation. That I eliminated all tests, I eliminated all kinds of stupid standard testing. And oh, by the way, I was also giving people multiple chances. Because look, in real life, if you get a project to do, somebody's going to help you, guide you. And if you turn in something and it's not good, guess what? They're going to give you some feedback. We do that in Toastmasters also, right? We get
Oh,
feedback,
yeah.
we improve, we come back, right? So the same thing in real life. So I didn't want students to be afraid of tests or afraid of doing something. So in the program, I was giving them three or multiple attempts to do something right because I wanted to get the final objective. You see? So what would happen is that at the end of the day, they would learn. And these people went out and started to change the world. So that's basically, I consider myself trying to bring out the inner greatness that exists in everybody. Okay. And so I feel like any student who comes to a program and joins a program should be able to go out and succeed. And it is my job as an educator, a professor, a program chair, whatever you call it. I mean, I'm not willing to accept a failure of a student because I feel like the failure of a student is my failure too. I mean, how come the student got admitted? Right? If the student got admitted, that student should not fail. So
Amen to
these are the
that.
things that I'm trying to do. So I feel like that is part of the reason that I had to write these books because I was finding some serious problems. And right now, one of the things that we're having is a serious problem with layoffs, right? Everybody's losing control over their destiny. Even if you are the best performer in the world, your job is not secure. No job is secure. Even government jobs where people used to accept low pay in return for job security is no longer secure. So it's like, okay, if that is the case, what can we as humans, as a society, to do to claim back our power? And that is the thing that I teach these days, which is personal branding, because I feel like personal branding gives you that packaging that you need to demonstrate to people your value, your value proposition, why you should be hired. So that's what I'm doing these days.
There you go, and doing a great work just to play on the title, bringing the inner greatness out, because that's so darn true. You're so right. Like job, heck, even one of our past guests mentioned that job security is not income security. Like folks
Mm-hmm.
think that those two are the same, but they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And no job is secure, even if you're a top performer. And it's just shows that hey, we gotta pivot and we definitely gotta change and keep ourselves adaptable.
Right. And the other thing is that too many people sell one service to one company. So they may work for a single company. But you see, each human being is multidimensional. You know from your own experience. You may have a particular primary role where maybe you're in information technology, whatever, and I had that. But in my life, I have never had a single income stream. Even when I was chief information officer at a company, I also had a private real estate practice on the side. That used to bring a third of my income. But what I was doing was there was a lot of things I was learning there: marketing, dealing with people, a variety of people, learning about the problems of society and things like that. Well, but you also learn public speaking. Now, could you also earn through public speaking? Absolutely. But you can also write. You can do that. If you're a good public speaker, you can probably also do audiobooks. You can probably do voice acting. So you can see that there's a lot of sources of income that we can do because if you're a multidimensional person, maybe you could also do some music on the side and earn money that way, right? Or teach others the discipline that you know. So that's what I mean in diversifying yourself and creating a brand and a business out of yourself and thinking yourself as a business, that you should never be selling a single service to a single employer. That's a single point of failure. See, in this modern world, we cannot afford to do that because companies are no longer trustworthy. Used to be that you would go to a company and the company is successful, you would actually take a share of the profits. That's what used to happen even in the old AOLs of the world, right? If you remember, in the old AOLs of the world and things like that, every original employee became multimillionaires because the company did well. Everybody got a share. That doesn't happen anymore. You could be creating a multi-billion-dollar company, but you could be laid off just like that. And as a matter of fact, that has happened quite often. So the only defense that you have is taking better control of your personal branding.
Amen to that. Amen to that. And you're definitely so right about that. And that's why it's really a must. So, for those who want to take control of their personal brand, what do you believe is the first step folks should take?
Well, they need to figure out who they are first. So, to give you a very simple example, my book contains stories of not only my experiences, but also stories of my students and mentees. So, I'll give you one example where a brand new graduate was about to graduate and was asking me, how do I make it into this field? I said, first of all, as I have said, people need to know your greatness. And so you're going to have to go out and speak at conferences. And the first thing she said was that, oh my God, how am I going to compete against all these people that are 20, 30-year-old veterans in the field? I said, well, you're definitely not going to do it the same way they do it. Because if you do it that way, you will never make it. What you have to do is figure out what's inside you that's so innate to you that most likely other people can't do. And that's what you got to start promoting. That's what you got to start leading with. And so I didn't know what she was going to do, but she had read my first book, Cybersecurity Leadership, and basically internalized everything. And what she did was she wrote a poem using the lessons in that book. She wrote a poem about cybersecurity. So I was like blown away. I was like, wow, this is amazing. It has rhyme, it has rhythm. And so I gave her a challenge and I said, okay, this looks like it could be a rap. Could you make a rap out of it? And 3 weeks later, she produced a rap out of it. I loved it. And I said, okay, could you put some music behind it? So you see, I'm raising the bar every time because as soon as my mentee or protege achieves something, I raise the bar to the next level so they can rise to the next level. And then it's also giving me ideas because at this time I'm also learning about their inner talents. Well, she did that also. And then I said, okay, I would love for you now that you've done this. This could be your opening at a cybersecurity conference presentation. You open with this cyber app, dance around the room with your music and everything. And I'm pretty sure it'll blow some minds. And she was like, what will Dr. Essie, what will people think? I said, that is the thing that that hold most people back. Never worry about what other people think, because it is not they who will define who you are. You have to define who you are and let them accept. Is everybody going to accept you? No. Don't care about that. But don't let other people set your limitations. And so, luckily, and then of course, she took that to heart, but then she said, I'm afraid of public speaking. I said, okay. So I said, okay, well, public speaking is also an art. It is practice. Nobody can ever learn to drive a car without actually sitting behind the wheel. You can read as many books as you want, but you actually have to start driving, and it's a matter of practice. So I said, you're gonna have to figure out how to do this. Join Toastmasters, whatever it takes. Well, she actually practiced with a virtual reality tool where she put this thing in her head and she could actually visualize an audience, and then she practiced for 6 months in that environment, and then she got ready, and basically she did open a cybersecurity presentation with her cyber app, and it basically made her a superstar. That year she won the 2019 up and coming rising professional of the year award from ISC Square, which is a pretty major organization in the field of cybersecurity. And so this kind of thing, like another graduate did something else. She does humor and comics and things like that. So she leads with that, you see? So again, whatever it is that is inside you that brings your whole personality out, that's what you got to lead with.
Amen to that. Amen to that. So many great nuggets that you really dropped there. Heck, even raising the bar for them to really help them get to that next level, and heck, even not letting others decide the limitations that on you, because that can be one of the biggest things. It's either we can be our own worst enemies and be our own detriment to our success, or if we get past our own selves, it's the outside world. If you focus too much on what other folks may try to limit you by, then that'll limit your greatness too. So great stuff, my man. Great stuff.
Yeah, so actually that brings me to another story, that is that some people are held back by the past. So some bad event may have happened in the past, and so they brood over that, and that kind of actually hampers their growth. And that, the example that I have on that one is that the first time I was starting to teach at a university, I had a student who was repeating the class. And what I noticed was that the student, great work and everything seemed great, but the English seemed weak. So I talked to the person and I said, "Why are you repeating the class and what happened?" I found out that the previous professor had failed her by half a point and would not round up that half a point to pass her. And basically told her that she was not ready to for the program, she was not prepared, and it was over, and basically she should drop the course and drop the program. And I coached her and I basically said, well, sometimes we think of a negative event as a bad thing. But look, if that professor hadn't failed you for that half a point, you would never have met me. You would never be in my class. So I would say take that negative event and think of it as a positive event, because now that I'm going to mentor you and show you the way to succeed and bring out your inner greatness, you will be unstoppable. And that's exactly what happened to her. She eventually graduated with honors. Not only did she complete the master's program in cybersecurity, but she also did an MBA. Now she's working and thriving and speaking at conferences and basically telling her story. And I said, don't be shy about sharing this story, because I can guarantee you there are millions of people that are being held back in the same way. Now, I had to coach her a particular way. I had to say, yes, your weakness is this English writing, but that's because English is not your first language. Her first language was French and some other languages. And I said, but if I pass you with this weakness, your foundation will be weak. So I need you to work with the writing center. Before you submit anything to me, you have to submit it to the writing center, get it done properly, then come to me. I will coach you on the field itself, but I cannot teach you English. That's not part of my role. But guess what? And I said, you have to work extra hard to overcome this weakness of yours. And after that, you will be unstoppable. And that's what happened. She worked very hard to overcome that particular weakness. So you see, a mentor and a coach and a good professor can do those kinds of things also. So people have to recognize that you have to view a negative event as a positive. And it happened in my life also. Like, my parents split up when I was in the seventh grade. But if that didn't happen, I would never have been financially independent almost since 10th grade. You see, because I had to start earning money from the seventh grade. And that also set me on the path to eventually get the scholarship to come to America. So you see, these are all things that are related. So we always must look at every event of our life as a pivot point, and we could do negative things with that pivot point or positive things. I'm a proponent of doing positive things. So, in other words, when you have a problem, focus 100% on things that you control, which are your actions and your reactions. And those are the things that I also have shared in that book, Bring Inner Greatness Out, the things that made me better. And in terms of teaching people, one of the things that I've said is that a professor must develop somewhat of an emotional trust connection with the student. Because if the student never trusts me as a professor, that student will not really embrace things from me. And a simple example of that was when I was teaching in the first grade, and there was a student everybody hated because he was apparently very naughty and very boisterous and would get into fights and fight everybody. But I was like, okay, I mean, nobody's born evil, and somebody in the first grade can't be evil. There's got to be something that is causing this extra energy burst. And I basically found out that this guy is probably very sharp and finishes his work very fast. And after that is bored and needs something to do. So I basically cornered him one day and I said, his name was Damon. I said, Damon, you're a naughty boy, but do you know that I love naughty boys? He was like, there's no way.
What?
There is no way. What? Nobody likes naughty boys, right? Because that's something nobody has told him. He said, no, you're lying. I said, no, I'm not lying because I was a naughty boy myself. But I think that the key thing about naughty boys is they're curious. They're trying to do things. So I shared with him what I felt like he was basically doing. I said, I feel like you probably are bored. You probably finished the work very fast, and you probably need to do other things. Because, see, in the educational system, what do? We teach everybody to an average, right? Which is crazy because no two human beings are the same. So why would we teach to an average? Why don't we teach to the individual? The inner talents that each person had, let's let that flourish. So I basically understood that part, and I told him, okay, once you finish your work, I will let you play in the sandbox. What else do you want to do? So I've tried to figure out what other things he could do. Oh my God. Once I turned that around, this kid was one of the best kids. And guess what? A few months later, his mom comes to school and he says, Professor, I don't know what Mr. Hasib or whatever they used to call me in those days, because I wasn't a doctor at that time yet. So he says, whatever you have done, he loves school and all that. And I said, I just basically showed him some care and love. And basically, instead of trying to discipline the kid, because it's like, if I don't earn the kid's trust, no amount of discipline is ever going to work. Right?
Hmm.
Because even at that age, they don't understand this whole business of punishment and penalties and all that stuff. I mean, these are just kids. So we gotta, and the same thing has to be done with all students, I believe. So I've done the same thing even later in life. As a mentor, the first thing I have to do is achieve that level of trust.
Powerful right there. Powerful right there indeed. And that's really something that we definitely need to, and heck, it goes back to the beginning of the recording where you mentioned how the education system's broken, and it's so true. Like no two children are the same. They
Mhm.
learn differently. Some are more curious than others, and that's exactly what happened with the child in your story. Like folks may have thought he was a naughty boy, but at the end of the day, he was just curious and wanted attention.
Exactly. Curious. He had this extra energy that he needed to somehow channel. And I had to figure out positive ways to channel that energy. And if I didn't figure out the outlet, he would be destroyed. There was another kid like that. His kid, he just wanted art. He wanted time to do art. So for him, same thing. As soon as he was able to finish the work that was assigned to all the other students, now some of the other students are taking all the extra time to do that. But that's okay. But you will often have these super bright kids or super talented kids or just wired differently. Now, some people I used to teach by taking them on a field trip, like language. I found that the best way to teach language was through touch, feel, so engage all the senses. So, for example, I was teaching them about leaves. Well, I would go out and let them touch the leaf. And green, I said, touch the leaf, touch the green, touch the tree, and all that. And then now it is much, much more, what do you call that? Deeper learning. You see, it doesn't even have to be in the classroom. The other thing I always did, even in the fifth grade, third grade, I would make them write. I would make them do debates. I had fifth graders start a school newspaper. So, in other words, let them figure out that the knowledge that they have should be applied to doing projects, doing things with the knowledge. Knowledge itself is useless. Knowledge in my head is useless, right? It is only powerful when I share it. And it helps empower somebody, do something, achieve a goal, etc.
Oh yeah, you can definitely say that again. Kind of like the whole classic saying, "Knowledge is power," is truly a lie. You have to apply the knowledge for it to have power, right?
Correct. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Some people actually hold back the knowledge thinking that's their power. But actually, by holding that knowledge, they are probably stunting their own development because maybe their knowledge is not complete. If they share it, maybe they will get some constructive criticism, and maybe that will help them refine the knowledge. My own knowledge is constantly being refined. The cybersecurity leadership book that I wrote, I had a definition in there that I developed in 2014 after my doctoral work. Well, that definition changed in 2016 when I attended an information governance conference and I realized that I had the word management in the definition. And I realized, I said, management is more interested in process, whereas cybersecurity leadership and leadership in general is more about innovation. And innovation requires governance. And governance has to be less restrictive. So you have to have rules, but you also have to be able to allow innovation. You see, management does not allow too much innovation because management is very focused on process. They're focused on reducing errors. And so I put in the word governance in the definition, and I basically said that cybersecurity leadership is basically governance. And that made the whole thing much more powerful. I also had a focus on systems in the beginning. Later on, I said, look, information, whether it resides in the system or in someone's head, it doesn't matter. Information is still information, and information in someone's head is often more valuable than the information in a system. And we often don't pay attention to that. So, our intellectual assets, if you think about a company, that where are their greatest intellectual assets? It's typically in the brain power of their employees. Yet, most executives do not actually put value to that. And the highest amount of intellectual capital loss that happens for any company is through their attrition of employees, through layoffs and things like that. So that's another observation that I made that I wrote about. Because if you think about, why do we hire anybody? We would never hire somebody if that person's value is lower than the price. In other words, if I'm paying them more than they're producing, I would never hire them, right? I always hire somebody when the value of what they produce is going to be higher than what I pay them, because that's where my profit comes from, right? Any company's profit comes from the difference between what I pay people and the value they produce, right? If they produce a $200,000 worth of value and I pay them only 100,000, I've just made $100,000 worth of profit. So when I have a layoff and I'm only recognizing the salary savings, but never recognizing the revenue loss, it's crazy. Like there was
It's
the program that I was running. it was actually bringing in $117 million worth of revenue every year. But I was seen as an expense in the salary column. The fact that I was bringing in $117 million of revenue every year was never recognized anywhere. So when they had a executive leadership change and they had a mass layoff, they never realized that by laying me off, they're actually going to reduce far more revenue than they will ever save from the salary that they just eliminated. And multiply that with a whole bunch of people. So they laid off like 108 people all at the same time.
Yes, indeed. That's shooting yourself in both your feet.
And it has reflected right away because the program is no longer bringing in $117 million a year. And the students have shrunk like crazy. And now I hear that they're eliminating some of the programs that were very successful. I said, wow, they're eliminating that program. They're eliminating that program. Yeah, they're eliminating all these programs because apparently they cannot now afford to keep the faculty in the chairs that are running those programs.
Mm. Oh my goodness. Heck, maybe,
But the
maybe
but the executives who made these crazy decisions, they're still there.
Man, yeah. They probably needed some coaching in their lives and should have thought a little more harder about that one.
Not them, but see, that's why I keep saying that the reason I survived is because I was already prepared for the layoff. As a matter of fact, that was some of the things that I would teach when I was teaching the personal branding classes. So I've done many presentations on personal branding. I basically would tell them. And as a matter of fact, in one of the presentations, my boss at that time was sitting right in the presentation. And I would say, look, I live my life knowing that my job is not secure. I could be laid off any day. And I'm always prepared for that. And that is why I have developed a personal brand, because that personal branding is going to give me the opportunity to get my new role faster, sooner, because my reputation will often precede a job interview, or I would often get an unsolicited job offer or a job interview. People would invite, etc. And that actually happens. That actually happened. And because of the multiple revenue streams, it never really affected me. But in many other cases, when people are not prepared, it could affect them financially big time. So that's one of the things that I teach also, because we will never be able to, well, until ethical people are put in power, qualified people are put in power, the situation is not going to change. But so we cannot wait for the long term effects of that happening. But what we can do is our actions. So I say that we should gain control of our brand, negotiate on the basis of that. When we negotiate salaries, we should not basically say, okay, what was the previous person making? And if they just say, oh, this is our budget, well, that's not the thing. If you hire somebody else, that person is producing 30 millions in revenue. If I'm producing 117 millions in revenue, why would I be worth the same as the person producing 30 million in revenue? And I got to be able to argue in that way. Once I argue that way, the whole equation changes. There has been situations when I went to a job interview and people asked me what I want to make, and when I talked about what I wanted to make and they would say it's too high, I said, okay, fine. I'd be also happy to take a zero salary and I get in half of the revenue or half of the profits or half of the savings. Is that okay? And so far nobody has agreed to that.
uh,
Right?
they probably knew the power behind it. It's like, wait a second, what
Yeah,
if he's right?
I was right. Right. First job that I was laid off from, I was bringing in $20 million of revenue every year. Now that company went out of business completely. So I understand, but it still happened. And as I said, every good employee produces far more in revenue than they ever take home. So the intellectual capital, intellectual assets of any company are in the brains of the employees.
Yes, indeed. But the doctor's dropping some hot fire tonight, folks. The doctor's dropped some hot fire, baby. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. Yes, indeed. This is something you better be taking some notes on today, folks. Got a whole tennis bracelet of jewels from this one. That's right, folks. Know your worth and be able to deliver that value. Deliver on your promises, folks. Once you know your true worth and able to deliver, you can write your own ticket, write your own check.
Yeah, and the other thing is that a lot of these universities, they spend more money on TV ads than they actually spend on education, which is kind of crazy because if you actually deliver high quality education, so that was the other thing that I was doing, because I just told you that I changed the whole program to be make it competency based and project based, because I wasn't testing knowledge. I would give students 3 4 attempts to do something, and they would do it, and then the result is what we would judge them on. Well, what did that do to them? It basically, oh, and in the program I also had presentations, writing, making PowerPoint, and also delivering your results in 3 different forms. One for the CEO high level executive types with an executive summary, the other to the actual people who are going to implement it in a more technical detailed terms. Then a third audience, which is the general company, because like you got to talk to the company and the board and people like that. Like, this is what we're doing. So it's got to be this. And then sometimes you might need a fourth, which is members of the public. So I taught them to communicate like that. So think of what happened when students started to graduate with that kind of brain power and training behind it. This was a completely different breed of students. So, for example, my graduates have won 2019 Rising Star of the Year award. 2020, they changed. Yeah, 2020 Rising Star of the Year award. So, 2 years in a row. The graduate program I designed in 2018 won Best Cybersecurity Higher Education Program in the USA award. 2018 and 2019 back to back. And this year, they're not even in the finals
Mm.
because I'm no longer there. You see, and because of the brand, it was also bringing in students. The reputation of the professors, the reputation of the students, because with the students are succeeding, you see, every student and graduate was bringing in anywhere from 10 to 50 students every term. I had one Navy guy who was bringing me 50 students every term, just on the reputation and quality. Because what I'd done was I talked to him at a conference one day. His son was going to grad school. I said, "You and your son come, talk to me, and I'll explain our program." I explained the program. And I said, by the time your son graduates and before your son graduates, your son will be able to do things and will be able to get jobs. And that's exactly what happened. His son got a job with the Pentagon before graduation. His career is on fire. So, what does the father do? He's a Navy guy. He starts sending his whole Navy people, 50 per term. As soon as they laid everybody off, including me, that revenue stream is gone.
Oh my goodness.
And none of the graduates or students are talking about the university anymore because they cannot send their friends, because who knows who's going to take care of the friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see, if somebody came through me, I was like, trust me, I will solve every one of your problems. Once you join, you should be able to graduate as long as you're doing the work. If you're doing the work, you should not fail. It's very simple. The only people who should fail are people who are not doing the work. That I cannot help you with, right? You got to do the work. And then when I coach you and give you feedback and I say revise it like this, do all these elements, this project has all these 50 elements. You were weak in the 30, but you were very strong in the 20. Well, you do the other 30 and you should be able to pass that project. And that is the way we were teaching. And so guess what? They had no fear. Most people are so scared. We got a midterm and a final and this and that. And it's based on memory and it's got based on this stress. And when your brain is under stress, your brain is not performing 100%. That is not real life conditions. You see, you need to be able to let that person relax and put out their best work. So I eliminated the fear of exams. It was never a fear of exams. Do something. Show me where you. I gotta know what your starting point is. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, indeed. And a question that just popped into my head about that, since you
Mm-hmm.
left, basically they suffered after you left. And it's so sad because, like, just imagine if were you able to show or at least have any possible ways to teach a successor in a way so that way they could possibly keep it.
Oh, they laid off the successor too. I was
Yeah.
I was grooming a successor. Yes, they laid her off too.
Well, there we go. No wonder they lost. That was like my biggest thing that popped into me. It's like, oh, leadership, cybersecurity leadership. It's like, hey, leave successors.
Yeah,
Well, we
yeah.
find the
I have
successor.
never run an organization without grooming a successor. That has never happened. So yeah, that was the other crazy thing. I could not believe it. I
Huh.
was grooming my successor for literally 3 years. Because, say, I didn't want to stay in that chair role for the rest of my life either, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I was, yeah. And my successor was the person I was grooming was absolutely amazing. I mean, we were about to write 3 books together for the university. Because the other thing that we were finding is that we had so much of these materials, and they were not really organized that well, and students were having hard time when they were graduating from one class to the other. They would lose the content and access to some of the materials. So we decided we're going to create some ebooks out of all that, and we're going to give it to them for the entire time. Actually, you should just be able to have it, right? Because you've paid the tuition, so we owe you all these materials and all that. So we had even on that project, and so they lost that too. So it's pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, and you got people without degrees in the field in charge of the whole program now. It's like somebody think about somebody with a PhD in chemistry. Would you ever have them in charge of a physics program? But that's the kind of things they're doing with the field of cybersecurity today.
On one hand, I can possibly get it's like, hey, they could possibly maybe have an understanding of it, but also there's the main thought of like, wait a second. So the folks that we are employed here, that they're folks are in charge of, like, they have no idea what's going on. Like that's just really a bad idea. Like if they're not a quick study, then they're in a bad position.
Yeah, and these are not fields that you can actually learn from books either. You have to have practical experience, because if you think about the whole field of cybersecurity, that field, the educational curriculum in that field really didn't exist until roughly 2010 or so. Yes, there were programs that called themselves cybersecurity, but they were more information technology oriented. Cybersecurity has evolved into being literally the the digital strategy of any organization today. So it's not just about the protection. So that's another thing that people think about in terms of cybersecurity. They're only thinking about the protection. Nobody cares about protection if your business is failing. So the first goal, role of a cybersecurity professional is enabling the mission of the organization. So, for example, to give you a very simple example, you're not going to have the same strategy in a healthcare organization versus, say, an educational organization, right? Because the mission is different, the goals are different, the information is different, the people are different, everything is different, the laws governing that organization is different. And so when you develop a strategy, it has to be specific to the sector. That means you got to take care of the mission first. Yet, most universities are not doing it that way. My students and graduates were. because that's what I wrote in the book Cybersecurity Leadership. In the very first chapter, I provide the whole model, and it talks about mission. The second thing we talk about is perpetual innovation. So you can have the best system in the world, but if you are a sitting duck and you don't change, you're going to be blown out of the water very soon. And that's what's happening, because you're not innovating, you're stagnant. The hackers or everybody else trying to get into your system are innovating constantly. If one door is closed, they try to find another open door and they get in. That's what happens. Otherwise, sometimes they will work on an insider to get into an insider and go through that, because insiders already have access to it. And that's kind of how, say, the OPM hack happened. They had a contractor who had access, and so when they came in through that contractor. Same thing with the SolarWinds hack that just happened recently, right? Because SolarWinds has access to all these systems. So once you are able to hack into SolarWinds, you have vision into everything. But you see, the whole reason all of that is a problem is because people are looking at a technology problem. It's not a technology problem. It's a governance issue. And even if you're hacked, you got to watch where your information is going. Where is it going? Are people keeping track of that? Because you got to keep track of the information as it's coming, going, etc.
You can say that again. You can say that again, indeed. And it's so darn true. It's like, hey, you got to know your business, and it's really all about the governance issues, like making sure everything is set up for the information that's being held. Because you're so right. Like in education versus health, like, hey, like medical records contain a
Hmm.
lot more sensitive information than, say, a school or a university. Like, it's definitely got to know where you're going. And I love the fact that you said perpetual innovation because that's so powerful. So that's the real PI that folks have to have, especially in the
Hmm.
business world today
Yep.
and forever.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yes, sir, indeed. So, coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive, and that is if you're to wake up tomorrow and you are 25 again, but this time in 2021 with all of your knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
The same advice that I got from my mother, which is that focus on things that you control, and things will be fine, because you can always trust yourself. And that's what I've done my whole life, actually. Luckily, I got that advice at a very early age. So I've never actually focused on any problem. I've always focused on the solution. You see, problems are going to happen. That's just part of life. But if you focus on the problem, you will lose sight of the solution. So accept the problem and now visualize the solution. How can you get out of there? And so that's what I've done. So, for example, I'll give you a very practical example. When I was laid off in 2010, the university shut down. And instead of just simply looking for chief information officer roles blindly, I decided to take a step back and go on a learning tour. I said, okay, life is basically giving me some free time that I've never really had. I never had this amount of time available. So I said, okay, let me travel through the US. Let me look at academia. Let me see what kind of programs they have. So I examined MBA programs, cybersecurity programs, educational programs, and opportunities in various states. I said, okay, I don't necessarily have to live in Maryland. I could work anywhere. And that learning tour basically gave me pivot points, because that's when I found that, oh, there's now a Doctor of Science degree in the field of cybersecurity. I said, wow, I don't have a doctoral degree. That would be a cool thing to have. And so I looked at the requirements. I'm thinking, at my age, would this even be possible? Would my brain really work? And I found out, no, not only is it supposed to work, actually, I was a perfect fit for it. And so I finished that and changed my whole life. And basically, that's what I've done. Every time I felt like I hit a fork on the road, I consciously decided the choices. Didn't just blindly to take one path, right? I said, okay, what's on that fork? What's on that fork? Do as much research and then make a very conscious decision on which way to go. So essentially, it's the same advice that I now give to my students and mentees, is basically that keep looking for fun and things that keep you excited and constantly learning, right? It's not, life is not about having a job. Life is about having passions. And so whatever you do must feel like a passion and everything. And then what will happen is that you'll feel like you're not even working. I mean, work won't feel like work. You see, if work feels like work, then that's not your calling, that's not your passion. And so everything I have ever done in life is never felt like work. See, when I used to work in the universities, I was waking up at 7 in the morning and working till 11 o'clock at night because I had some certain rules where if a student sends me an email, that email has to be responded to within 24 hours. That was one of my rules.
There we go. There we go. That's what I'm talking about right there. That's right. The good doctor. My man's been dropping all sorts of shiny gems, baby. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. And the good news is, like, that's not even all of it. That's maybe 5% of it. So for those who want to check out close to the other 95% of it and keep up with what you're doing, Mansur, what's the best way for folks to reach out to you?
I think the best thing is to visit my website, www.cybersecurityleadership.com. And there's tons of videos there, educational videos and things like that. And they can also order author signed copies of the books at a discount, and that's free shipping within the USA. And they can also come and join me on my Conversations with Dr. Cybersecurity show, where they can ask me any questions about career, cybersecurity, public speaking, whatever their topics. And for 15 minutes in a recorded call, it's completely free, and they can just come and chat. And I think they should also connect with me on LinkedIn. And then once they read the books and everything, they'll probably have more focused questions, and then the questions would give better answers, I think. For example, if they just ask me what is a personal brand at the very first question, if they have read the book, then that question will be a lot deeper, right? I can probably give them a better answer, because they might now tell me a little bit more elements about what they feel like their personal brand is, and then I could point out a few things in a much more focused manner. So I know that people who have read the book actually benefit a lot more when they ask me questions. So our friend Stan, who introduced us, he just finished reading the book, and he wrote a review on Goodreads. So people should read his review and other reviews. And there's also, the book is available in audiobook format. So that was the other thing. I knew that people won't often read, but I know they will listen. Maybe they're on a drive or a commute, they can listen to the audiobook. And I do have a few copies of the audiobook for free available to people who want to be a reviewer. So if they're willing to write a review, it doesn't have to be a positive review. They just have to write a review. Either for the US market or the UK market, I do have some free codes to give away for the audiobook on the personal branding.
Sweet. Well, there you have it, folks. Take advantage of what the good doctor is offering today, folks. Take a good look at all of this stuff. It's going to be all in the show notes. Keep up with all that he's doing, because the good news is it's far from over. I'm sure a man has all sorts of wonderful products and opportunities for folks to take advantage of in the very near future. So, any parting words before we close up shop?
The parting words would be that, look, you were born unique. So don't try to be someone else. Let's find out what it is, that unique talent that you have, and let's start from there. The key thing is, people often try to be perfect. Nobody's looking for perfection. The key is, you do not have to be perfect, but you have to perfect your uniqueness. That's the key.
How's it going, you super special awesome human? Since you made it to the end of this episode, it looks like you really enjoyed yourself. Since you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with at least 3 people in your network and tell them what you really liked about this episode.